Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Bassel Haidar. He is the Director of AI and ML at Guidehouse. Bassel, good to have you with us.
Great to be with you, Tom. Thank you for having me.
And our topic today is the specialized branch of generative artificial intelligence, which seems to be taking the world by storm. And I think there's a lot of distinctions probably that you're going to make for us between the commercial online, let's say, consumer use of it and really use by specialized organizations. And why don't we start with a definition of exactly how it works? And maybe that can help people understand how it could help their agency.
Yeah, so maybe we'll start on the most known generative AI application, which is Chat GPT or GPT-4, which really powers it. And really, if when you think about generative AI such as GPT-4, it operates on cutting edge machine learning algorithms designed to understand, generate, and manipulate data in ways that mimic human creativity and understanding. It's really based on an architecture that was developed back in 2017 called the transformer architecture. There was a big paper called "Attention is All You Need" by Google, and I believe University of Washington, some folks there. And in there they really made some significant advances into how to train these models in parallel, massively parallel training. They trained them on large amounts of data, scraped a lot of data from the internet and some books and some other stuff. But really, the core idea at the heart of the transformer, there's something which is called an attention mechanism. And the way, I'd like the audience to think about the attention mechanism, it's like sitting on a table, dinner table, and you're having conversations around. Now, if you focus on one conversation, you can understand, you'll be able to participate, but it's going to be very hard for you to, if there is a dinner of 20 people on the table and everybody's having conversation, for you to hone in on that. So the idea of this attention mechanism, it allows you to hone in on the different parts of the conversation, as many as you need. It gives you contextual understanding, things that are relative in the sentences and where things are placed. And it does that all in a parallel fashion. So because of that architecture, we'll start to be able to create what we call language models and large language models, meaning they have a lot of parameters and train on a lot of stuff. And that's how ChatGPT and other things came to life. So that's on the precursor of how we got here. Why is it important to different industry? It's because it allows you to do many things. It allows you to act in a specific way because it has such a vast knowledge of things. It can be a marketing assistant, it can be a language assistant, it can be a translator. So think of it as a big beam of light, but when you focus it on what you want it to do, it becomes an expert in that field.
And just a quick question on the languages that it is capable of ingesting and processing. Can it also work on non-verbal or non-written types of quote unquote languages, like image sets, for example?
Great question, Tom. So absolutely yes, and they are built on what we call foundation models, and these foundation models can be basically tuned on different applications. So anything, and think about it, input in and input out. So whatever that input in, it could be an image, it could be a video, it could be audio, it could be text, it could be a wireless signal, it could be a sonar. Whatever input you can put in, you can get on the other end, and it doesn't have to be in the same format. So I can take a video, for instance, and I can ask it, hey, give me a description of what's in there, or what's the image, and give me a description of it. So it can work on the other side. So we're moving now, and you bring in a great topic. It's not just chat and language model or large language model. We're talking about multi-modal models, MODAL. So I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it correctly. So the ability to use basically different forms of inputs to create to generate different forms of outputs.
Yeah, so the different modes can even interact with one another within your model.
That's correct. So you can now, for instance, if you go on ChatGPT, it just doesn't understand only text. You can upload an image, you can upload a PowerPoint presentation, you can do many things like that.
And this gets into the question of the ethics of it, or simply maybe ethics is a loaded word, but making sure that you train it in a way that's not biased. And for example, if you wanted it to operate in English and you loaded it with middle aged or Elizabethan English, you would get a different outcome than if you did 20th century English or even 21st century English, for example.
This is I don't know how this problem will ever get solved because you have to train it on something. And whatever that something is inherently biased depending on who created it. So we can, there's a lot of talk in the industry about eliminating bias. And I believe this is a wrong approach because I don't think we can eliminate. We can hopefully understand some of these biases. We can mitigate them, but it's not 100% sure that we can take them out. And an example is, let's take an example if the model is trained on different professions, and if it sees that, for example, that most of the nurses' names that are out there are women, it's going to assume that if you say a nurse, it should be a woman, not a man, right? Of course, then we know that that's false, but that's what it is. Another great example, I would say, on weddings. So in the Western world, when we think of a wedding, we think a woman dressed in white and a man dressed in a tuxedo or a suit. But if you go to Africa, they don't dress that way. If you go to the Middle East, they don't dress that way. So our thoughts, even in terms of people, of what we expect things to be, are different because of different cultures and different norms. So that's why we can reduce, the bias, but I don't believe we can absolutely eliminate it 100%.
And maybe one way to get at the best possible outcome then is to start with your governance in having this in your organization. And that way, if you have the right people involved, then they can balance one another and everyone can understand what is going into this model. So maybe talk about some good governance models for a place like
Yeah.
a federal agency.
Yeah, so like, and I think honestly, every governance model has to be tailored for each company. So for instance, at Guidehouse, we have what we call our RISE value. And these RISE value are based on respect, innovation, integrity, stewardship, and excellence. So what we did to personalize our own governance model, we took each of these RISE values, and for instance, under respect, and we said, okay, under respect, we want to look under ethical consideration and social impact. What does that mean? That means our AI should adhere to societal norms and value, respect human rights, and avoid causing harm. Right? Social impact, the broader social impact of AI should be understood and managed. AI should not contribute to inequality or social harm, as an example. So we go through these things, and so we try to map 10 of them. You can map a whole lot more, but we talk about accountability, legal compliance, transparency, robustness and reliability, privacy and data protection, safety and security, the model bias that we just talked about, and sustainability. Now you can actually have a lot more than those, but we believe also that we need to have governance principles that make sense and that can work with the business. Because if the process becomes too heavy, people tend to not follow it. So that's why we match ours. Everybody in our company, 17,000 people, know the RISE values and what we stand for, because these are repeated to us every day. So we map those to our governance, and then became very easy for everybody to say, oh, okay, that's under innovation, that's under integrity. So it makes it easier. So that's one thing. The other piece of this is we have to understand that governance is not just one document that you do one time and you move on. It's a living thing. So that means it has to be reviewed. You have to understand where are the friction that happens with the business, and how can you apply it in a way that's agile and with minimal friction, so you can deliver on client projects. And that's really what's important. The whole reason we have a business, whether it's Guidehouse or anything else, is really to serve our clients.
And let's talk about then the ways that it does change organizational behaviors and maybe start with the people aspect of this because it's going to change the way they work. And therefore, they'll need certain trainings, certain understandings, maybe discuss those. And one of the things I wanted to zero in on is training people on how to ask, how to do a query of a
Oh.
large language model, because what you ask it can have a big effect as much as what you use to train it with.
So, Tom, I think you're referring here to one of my favorite topics, I think, in generative AI, which is prompt engineering. And this is not a new topic. It's been around for a while. I think sometimes in technology, we like to use big words. And if people from outside, they hear prompt engineering, they get really scared. And really, what it really is how do I ask my large language model or my language model or my multi-model, how do I ask it in a way to deliver the best result possible? That's really what it means. Okay. So if we simplify it like that, then it becomes really easy. So prompt engineering, there are some tenets of it, and they're not very hard. But it's like us having a conversation. So if I told you, Tom, hey, I want you to do a presentation for me. Well, your next question is going to be, well, Bassel, what is it about? And how long do you want it? And who's the audience? And things of that nature, right? In order for you to deliver on what I'm asking. So it's the same thing. You have to walk the LLM through what are you trying to do. A lot of people come in and say, summarize this or translate it. It's like a one sentence instruction. But if you really want to create great results, you really have to break it down and maybe have to have a role playing back and forth. So something I use a lot personally, I thought to myself one day, well, no matter how much I learn about prompt engineering, I think the LLM is better at it than me. So what I usually do, I say, you're a prompt engineer expert. Your job is to keep asking me questions to craft the perfect prompt. And then I said, either to craft the perfect prompt or until I say stop. So at that point, the LLM says, okay, what do you need? So now I say, I want to write a blog, and says, well, what is this blog about? And we go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And now the LLM itself created the blog, the prompt, and then I say, okay, and then it goes ahead and executes the prompt. So it's really fun way. So that's why I wanted to give that example. I mean, prompt engineering could be a lot of fun, especially if you have this role playing back and forth. The other piece of this, because I had mentioned this earlier, is what role do you want the LLM to be? So if I wanted to write, like an Ernest Hemingway or a government contractor or a policymaker or a journalist, if you give it examples, especially if it's historical figures, or you can copy and paste different things. Let's say you like specific type of writing, say I want it in this writing, it's going to mimic that in a very, very meaningful and impactful way.
Right. So, any examples you can give of people that are good at this? I mean, can we look to as a model for how to use these LLMs?
When you say people who are good at this, like
Organizations, say.
oh, organizations wise, yeah, I mean, I would say all the big tech firms are really good at it. They've created these models. So you can look, OpenAI for sure is one of the leading ones, but so is Microsoft and Google and Meta. So all of these organizations are very strong at it. But also I'm seeing a big push on the government side, on the public sector side. A lot of people are upskilling on how to create, effective prompts, and we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing also a big push in the healthcare and insurance industry. If you want to talk about commercial side, they're investing heavily in generative AI, I would say as well.
Got it. So there's a lot of commercial applications that could map over to governmental functions, healthcare being is a prime example, I think.
It's a huge example, because think about what government and actually any organization, but really specifically government, what are they? They're a paper factory, right? When I say whether it's laws, regulations, policies, so what's a good thing to use? A large language models who understand, right, words, and can interact with them and do things for you. So definitely there's a big mapping, but also there's the citizen part, right? So a lot of you have state and local government, and they're there to provide service to the citizen. Who wants to go? Let's give you an example. If I want to go and apply to a small business loan, and I go to the SBA website, they have a great website, but really I don't want to dig in for 3 hours to find the form that I need. It would be much easier if I have like a chat-like interface, and within Gen AI, we call that retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, that has ingested all the website, all the content, all the PDFs, and now I can ask it questions, and then it can generate the content and tell me where to find it. So I'm no longer now searching for things. I'm getting the answers, and then I'm getting, the links to where I need to go if I wanted to download a specific form or fill something out.
And how do you ensure that the right people with the right real knowledge are in the loop in the usage of these things, such that people don't respond to and act on, say, a hallucination that might be generated?
Oh, that's a great question. So if you're using retrieval augmented generation, you mitigate some of that. If you're using a regular large language model, you don't really mitigate that, because the reason why you mitigate it, because I'm founding its contextual knowledge with either the documents or the website or any other structured or unstructured data that they are grounding their understanding on. Now, large language models, when like ChatGPT or Claude from Anthropic and others, if they don't know something, they have a tendency to hallucinate. So usually, what I do is personally, if I'm using these commercial off-the-shelf tools, I usually ask it for a confidence score, and I usually say, "Hey, give me as anytime I say a prompt, give me a confidence score, and if it's less than 90%, for example, don't show me the result." And if they say it's 90%, I say, "Well, how did you come up with 90%?" Right? So there's also the follow-on question. I can do the same thing with the RAG that I just mentioned, where we're giving the content where it's coming and also a confidence score. So we kind of use the LLM itself to send back the response. And sometimes I take the response and send it back and say, make claims about that response or what kind of questions to see if they match up. Now, we can do that automatically. The idea is that you want to have some human in the loop to check some of these things, but I think it's going to be impractical to do it all the time. So understanding that these tools are predictive in nature, right? So it's a percentage. Nobody said it's 100%. So there is a potential for error, and you have to accept as an end user that there is part of that response, even if we say 95%, that could be wrong. What we can do automated tools in terms of saying if it's less than less than 90%, it goes automatically to a domain expert. Otherwise, then the user has to assume some of the responsibility in order to verify if the information is correct. Very similar, I would say, Tom, to driving a car and you have a red light. Most people will stop, but somebody will burn the red light and it's on you.
Sure. It's almost like in engineering in the concept of heterodyning, where frequencies will combine to produce an apparent frequency. You just want to make sure it's the one you really want and not something that is throwing the whole thing off key.
That's exactly right.
All right. And so tell us more about some of the organizational challenges. It's a great idea. Everybody gets excited about it, but there's a little bit of a bridge you've got to cross to where you can start typing in all those well engineered prompts.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, first of all, the biggest impediment, I think, is people apprehension and fear of learning something new. And then there's a lot of news that, hey, AI is coming for your jobs and all of that. That is true with anything that's new. Like, when computers came in, we had the same thing. And when printers came in, people thought we're not going to print any more papers. We're going to see digital, but we end up printing more. So I don't believe that jobs are going to go away. And I think we're going to have different types of jobs for sure. But that's why upskilling is critical. And being in fear of AI is one of the biggest, I think, mistakes that people have. You don't have to be super technical. I mean, there was a tweet, maybe about a year and a half ago or something, and as they said, English is the new programming language. Think about this. I went to computer science school. I did a bachelor's and master's. I spent thousands of hours, learning programming. Today, I can do all of that by telling it what I want in plain English, right? Or your whatever natural language is, because they have them in different languages as well. So there's nothing to fear, really. It's you try, you get a result, you refine it, you add to it. So really, it's just getting away from that fear and allowing people to experiment. The other piece of this is also on the companies themselves, right? Because there is a real fear for companies that, hey, if we open up ChatGPT and they dump in customer data or they dump in their company data in there, that's already part of that model and learning. And now we have other issues. But if you train your staff, anybody could become a programmer, anybody could become a marketing person, anybody could become all these things. So now you're opening up a whole panacea of things for your employee to be able to experiment in things that probably they thought they could never do before. I'll tell you, Tom, today I feel like I'm a orchestra conductor. I don't know how to play the violin. I don't know how to play the piano. I don't know how to play the guitar, but I can make music because I can use this tool and tell it what to do, which is kind of a very empowering feeling.
Yeah, so people then shouldn't fear from their jobs then. It sounds like more they should understand the potential to realize human potential.
That's exactly right. And not feeling stuck, right? Because many of us are scared of change because it's like, if you've been doing something for 20 years, well, what am I going to do something new? You can, and you have the tool to do it. So it's just a wonderful opportunity.
Now, your colleague at Guidehouse, Ms. Jones, mentioned that, well, maybe in 5 or 6 years, the or the various forms of artificial intelligence will be able to perform at a moderate human level. Maybe it's 20 years till they perform at a high level human level. What's your prediction for where all of this is going, especially in the generative, and what can we expect in the next few quarters and years?
I mean, anybody who can tell you an exact prediction, they're Nostradamus. Things are changing so fast. But since you asked me the question, Tom, I'm going to take a stab. I think, we had mentioned, hey, the transformer architecture came up in 2017. And obviously it's been used before, but until we gave it that chat interface, nobody really cared about generative AI, although we did have generative AI. So it's not really that new. It became more new, with chat GPT. So 2017 to through 24, but it came out 2022 November. So that was about a 5-year span, right? But now everything has accelerated since that day. And I think we're going, and we talked about large language model, we talked about large multi-model, but I think what we're coming to right now is instead of foundation model, we're talking about agent foundation model. And the agent foundation model is a new paradigm. And the reason why it's a new paradigm is because now you have these AI agents, which are LLMs with tools, right? So a tool could be, I can search the internet. A tool could be, I'm an expert at a policy. So depending what the tool you have, and these tools can be functions, so you can add them ad nauseum. Now you can take these agents and put them in a simulated world, kind of like Minecraft, right? The game. And you can run these simulations over and over and over again until they get really, really good at stuff. And now you're creating these agents. So this is all happening right now. I forgot his name, but he was chief scientist of NVIDIA, had a big TED talk about it. Just last week, Microsoft released a paper about an interactive agent model as well. So it seems all the big companies are converging into this. So I think that AGI is closer than people think, and I think we're probably going to achieve it inside 5 years, not in 20 years.
All right, so it's an exciting future. We should look forward to it then, bottom line.
I it's a wild ride. Buckle up, Tom.
All right, let's thank today's guest. Bassel Haidar is the director of AI ML at Guidehouse. I'm Tom Temin. You're watching Federal News Network. Let's go back to the studio now for more on the AI and data exchange.